Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Nicola Rose. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So, I am the writer and director of two feature films, and most recently, Magnetosphere, which is the movie that brought me on the podcast. It's about a neurodivergent 13-year-old girl discovering that she has synesthesia. And it just was released in North America on streaming a couple of weeks ago. And it will continue to be released in more territories as we go.
It's awesome. So did you write that movie as well, or just direct it?
I was the writer and director of this movie.
Oh, awesome.
Mhm.
How'd you come up with the idea for the movie?
The idea of, or the concept of synesthesia was always something that had been interesting to me. And I kind of circled back around to it unexpectedly when I decided to do a second feature film because I had finished my first one, I think it was 2022, and I was trying to figure out where do I go from here.
Hmm.
And this idea of synesthesia as this sort of fascinating neurodivergence that some people have popped back into my mind as something that perhaps I could um, set myself a challenge of depicting on screen because it seemed so like tailor made for
Sure.
film or television.
Yeah. Um, can you maybe explain for those that don't know what synesthesia is, what it is?
Sure. So synesthesia is a neurodivergence or a perceptual or neurological condition where your senses are combined. So you might end up hearing color or tasting sound or seeing the days of the week as having certain assigned colors and shapes or other sensory combinations that are not necessarily found in more neurotypical people.
Or or you said you've been interested in it for a while. Where did you come across it?
I
Like,
think I first heard about it on a radio program
okay.
years and years ago. I think when I was in my teens. Boy, it would be hard to tell you exactly, but I think I heard about it on a radio show. And I just remember the radio for some reason. That's like what sticks in my mind. And this idea of synesthesia. And, many years later, I read about just how many different potential kinds of synesthesia, modalities of synesthesia there could be, experiencing feelings as textures or experiencing sounds as having a pitch. It's potentially hundreds. It's all over the map.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually had never heard about it, and then um I was reading a James Balducci book. Started a series called Memory Man, and the main character in that, Amos Decker, had a brain injury, and then he had synesthesia as one of the things he's had, and then I came across this film. So the
Yeah,
last month I've had like came across it twice and I haven't before, so it's kind of interesting.
that's interesting. Yeah, synesthesia is very common and possibly more common than we know because people are
Right.
not necessarily aware that they have it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What is your definition of inclusion?
My definition of inclusion is being kind to people, good to people, whether or not they may seem to operate differently than you do.
Yeah, it's a, it's a great definition.
I don't think it has to go too much further than that because other than that, you're making carve outs and that's not really inclusion. So,
Right, for sure. Growing up, did you have any exposure to neurodivergence or people with disabilities?
yeah, definitely. I was funny that this should come up. I was when I was about 10 years old, my first like volunteer work was assisting with acting classes for visually impaired kids and blind and visually impaired and
Mhm.
otherwise. I think kids with other kinds of disabilities, but especially visual ones
Sure.
in my hometown at the time. And so that really didn't have as much to do with things like synesthesia and other
Mhm.
neurodivergences, but I was definitely exposed to stuff like that. And, you would meet people with autism, people with
Mhm.
which was definitely defined in a much narrower way back in the day than I think it is now. Speaking of inclusion, inclusion
Yeah.
is also defined as discovering that things have a broader applicability or definition than we might have previously thought, and not necessarily being so rigid about it. And of course, you can go too far in that direction too,
Right.
but it's important to realize that these things do expand over time, and that just because somebody isn't, for example, nonverbal, it doesn't mean that they don't have autism. It doesn't mean, all sorts of
Right.
things,
Yeah.
definitions that might be very old fashioned now and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over the years, definitely, I had some neurodivergences of my own, but I wasn't, well, either I didn't have them as a child, which I think I did, or I wasn't diagnosed until much later on, which I think is also true. I was diagnosed with ADHD, but that was a much more recent development.
Yeah. I've actually, a lot of people I've been interviewing, they had been later diagnosed for ADHD and different things. It's interesting. Um, I didn't, I mean, my experience with disability is my daughter. She's 20 or 22. Her name's Cecilia. She has epilepsy and cerebral palsy. And we found that out really early. So, it's interesting how there's many people who find out later in life, or are diagnosed later in life. Some people kind of, like you maybe said, that they kind of have it, know something maybe is there. They just don't, get it diagnosed till later.
Or they may not know that it's an issue. I mean, with something
Right.
like epilepsy, which shows up, I'm assuming, as seizures, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard not to know that something is
Right.
the
Yep.
case. Something is up.
For sure. Yeah. So you said you helped like an acting class when you were 10. Have you always been interested in like the arts and acting and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a son also. He's Aiden. He's 20. He just turned 24. He was always in the plays and stuff, so
Yeah, I guess that's
he
what I did.
enjoyed the acting and stuff.
Cool. Is he
Yeah.
neurodivergent as well, or is he?
He is not. He was on the what's called the gifted side of things. So we had him on the that side of the spectrum, and then my daughter was on the other side. So we kind of got the
Yeah.
both ends of the educational bell curve, they call it, or whatever. So
It's like a horseshoe. The ends are so
yeah,
close together. It's like it's kind
yeah,
of.
for sure. What was like your favorite player musical that you were ever in?
Oh, well, it actually pops up in a way in Magnetosphere, which
Mm,
is Gilbert and Sullivan. And in the case of Magnetosphere, they're doing the Pirates of Penzance,
yep.
which wasn't the one I did, but might as well have been. You know, they what I love about those, they're not really musicals, I guess technically they're operettas,
Okay.
is that they're really beautiful, but they're also really silly,
Right.
and kind of both things in huge measure. So
Yeah.
they're a lot of fun, and that was something that I was really pleased to be able to include in the story, because I felt like it aesthetically it belonged there.
Yeah. That's cool. So how did you get into how did you figure out you wanted to be a director and a writer? Or when did that start?
That started later. I don't think I wonder about this. Like, do kids go around thinking I want to be a director? Or I don't think they do.
Right.
I think what they're
Okay.
exposed to is more like actors, and like you
Yeah.
said, your son was in plays, and I think that's kind of more what they see as existing in front of them,
Yeah.
as like actors. And so anyway, I was in my late 20s, and thought, well, I mean, that's not the whole story. Like I had done some directing of theater and live stuff, and it kind of didn't come to me until a little later in life. Like maybe I should, because I was doing some acting on camera, and I wasn't necessarily like enthralled with it or wanted to do it for life, but it was interesting to me. Cameras are interesting to me. The way they can capture things so differently is interesting to me. And I had always written. You asked earlier, like, was I always into the arts? Like, yeah, I think I was. I think I was always writing
Mhm.
before anything else, really. And so, yeah, specifically, I think writing was probably the first thing I did that was more artistic. And anyway,
Yeah.
so I must have been 27. Was directing.
What do you hope comes out of the film Magnetosphere? What are you hoping people, when they watch it, what they take away from it?
Well, one thing that's been happening is that people have seen it and realized that either they have synesthesia or somebody they love has
Hmm.
synesthesia, and it's come up, more often than you would think. It's like somebody
Hmm.
pops up and they're like, "Oh, I have that. I didn't know I had that,"
Yeah.
or "Oh, my loved one has that." So it's I think what would be really cool is if people if the majority of people who see the film realize that there's something either about themselves or about somebody close to them that they didn't
Hmm.
necessarily know that this movie helps them figure out.
Yeah. Plus, I'm sure, I mean, it's probably for us, we went to a lot of things with the Epilepsy Foundation in Minnesota when Cece was younger. So being around other people, families in the same situation, I mean, really helped us. I'm assuming it's similar with, if somebody watches the film, sees they have synesthesia, they know it, and now they see somebody else with it. I mean, it's got it probably has the same effect on them where hey, I'm not alone.
I
There are other people
suspect
like
that,
me. So
yeah.
that's, yeah. So I mean, I'm sure that helps also.
I think in a case like what happened with your daughter, I mean, correct me with them if I'm wrong, but I
Yeah.
think that's probably got to help a lot more because it is so much more tangible and visible,
Yeah.
as opposed to synesthesia, which I've heard it on good authority that 4% of the population has it, which is already high. And I think based on no authority that it must be a lot higher because
Right.
so many people, each screening that I have of this, so many people come
Yeah.
up and they have it in some way or they discover they have it. And I think it's underreported because I think people don't know. So I think in cases where it's affecting people adversely, what I mean to say is, I don't think in all cases it affects people in a negative way. I think it
Yeah.
can affect people in
Sure.
a negative way, and those are the cases where like recognition and
Right.
finding a group of people who have something similar, I think that can really help. But then in cases where it's just kind of neutral, like, oh, I see
Yeah.
Tuesday is blue, but I don't know
Right.
why. Like those
Right.
people probably aren't so much looking to find their tribe. Maybe they are. I shouldn't speak for other people, but
Right.
I think it can take many forms.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. What is your process like? I mean, I've never written in anything close to a film or any. I don't really write a lot. I mean, what was your process like once you decide to write and create a feature film about this? Like, how did you go about coming up with the storyline and all that kind of stuff?
Oh gosh, this one, this was an unusual example because the actual storyline, which is pretty simple, it's like a girl growing up. If you
Hmm.
take away the synesthesia, it's just like a very basic coming of age story, which is why my friend came up with a tagline for it that's like, not your neurotypical coming of age film, which I
Oh,
think is
there
so
you
clever. And I'm like, why did I not come up with it? So I had years to come up with this. I never, but anyway, the storyline actually was something that I think I wrote when I was like 15 years old or 14 years old, and then added in the details that would make it be an actually interesting story.
go.
The
Hmm.
synesthesia, um, the neurodiversity, the even just the specifics of what her family was doing. I think all of that was stuff that I added on. Like 20, almost 20 years after the original um, storyline. But normally, my process, which isn't a process, looks a lot more like scribbling in a notebook until I have something that kind of feels um, semi cohesive and then kind of going with that and building onto it. And you're like, okay, I'm going to graft other stuff onto the semi cohesive story and kind of see what I get.
Yeah. So from like the time you decided you're going to make the film till it being released, like how many years does that process take?
Um, this was a relatively quick process for
Okay.
that. And I want to say it was probably until the time that it was released. It was between 3 and 4 years. Again, that's really, really swift. It seems really long, and it is really long, but most of these things, they never see the light of day, or they take 13
Right.
years, or
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, how did you find like the actors and stuff? Or you just put out a call like we're doing this film, or if you're interested, or did you seek out people or both or
Yeah, it was a mix. The actors who the most of the adult actors were people that I was already well aware of and wanted to work with, and people that I approached their management. Some of the actors, some of the adults were new to me, people who auditioned whom I thought, this person's excellent, I want to use them. The child actors who are obviously really central to this thing. I did not know any child actors in the area where we were filming. And in fact, none of them are really from the area where we were filmed, but like from, long story short, they came in through a more standard casting call and through different agencies that specialized in child and teen, they call them youth talent. So, yeah.
Interesting. Where was it filmed?
It was filmed in Ontario in a town called Sault Ste. Marie, which is considered northern Ontario. I want to say it's up by, well, I definitely know it is up by Lake Superior and a couple of the other Great Lakes, and about halfway up the province, I want to say.
I mean, that sounds familiar. I'm from Minnesota, and we went up to North Shore and crossed into Canada last summer and went to Thunder Bay, but Sault Ste. Marie does sound familiar.
Yeah, I think Thunder Bay is further up into Ontario.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, once I started watching, I recognized Colin from Whose Line Is It Anyway? So that was kind of, I'm like, I've seen this guy before. That's cool.
Yeah. There's always somebody who's going to recognize somebody. Yeah.
So now that it's been released, like what platforms can people watch it on?
They can. This is the most important thing. They can see it on Prime Video in Canada, in the US, and in Mexico. They can see it on Apple TV. If you go to our distributor's website, which is Freestyle Digital Media, and look for Magnetosphere, which is the film's name, Magnetosphere, you can see like 9 or 10 other platforms that it's on as well. But the two that come to mind, because mainly people are going to have them, is Prime Video and Apple TV. There's Fios, there's Sling, there's Google Play, there's like a bunch of others. If you were to Google Magnetosphere and where to watch, a whole bunch more would come up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I know just seeing other people in the disability space, some people talk about like representation of like, actors in films, like if it's a movie where the character has a disability, where some people want a person with a disability playing in that role. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, or did you try to do that for this role, or?
It's not something that you can necessarily so much do for synesthesia, especially if there are certain skills that the character has to, that the actor has to have. You can't. This is not a case where you have to cast for authenticity in the neurotype of the person before all else. There are other cases, you do not, I think it's a very fine line, but you don't want somebody, who doesn't have, it's a tricky thing, because synesthesia is not actually a disability. It's a neurotype. It's a neurodivergence, to be exact. It's a neurodivergence.
Yeah.
And what you can't actually prove whether or not somebody has it or doesn't have it. There are cases where somebody having something is going to help the portrayal, and then there are other cases where it may not be helpful to the actor's ability to portray it at all. So it just has to be very much taken on a case-by-case basis. As far as we know, this actress didn't have synesthesia, but it could turn out later in life she does. We don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense. Is synesthesia something that people are diagnosed with, or is it not actually a diagnosis?
It can. I've heard of people being diagnosed, like, in the movie, she goes to, she has this conversation with a neurologist, which is sort of by chance, somebody who knows somebody she knows. I think it can be diagnosed. I mean, I've heard people talk about a formal diagnosis, but in as much as it's not a disorder and it's not something that you're necessarily trying to treat, I think mainly that's going to be helpful insofar as A, if it has a negative effect on you, and B, if it's combined with something else, some other kind of neurodivergence or disability that may actually have an adverse effect on your daily life. Very unlikely, perhaps. I don't want to say very unlikely, but it's not necessarily so that synesthesia would harm you. Unlikely in a way that it would be harming you.
It's very interesting. Are you planning on making any more films?
No concrete
No.
plans right now. No concrete plans at the moment. Things fluctuate and evolve, so there may be something that comes down the pike, but at the moment I'm just sort of on an extended break.
Yeah. So what do you do for fun when you're not writing and directing films?
I have a day job teaching, and I continue with that. And I enjoy traveling and spending time in Europe, although I have not been for a while. So probably time to do that again once circumstances permit. And yeah.
Is there who's like your favorite director? Like if you could meet any director, who would you want to meet?
If I could meet them, or well, I guess yes. Well, in general, it's Wes Anderson. But I might answer the question differently if you're like, who's somebody whose use of music astounds you, or who's somebody whose use of color is blah blah blah. It might be different for different things. If we're just talking about meeting people, I that's sort of my overall answer.
Sure. I guess can you maybe? I've heard. I hear the word director. Like, does a director just sit in a chair and yell out once in a while? Like, how involved does a director get, or how involved do you get when in the film? Like, how much into the minutia do you get?
The director is the person who works closely with both the actors and the crew of the technical crew of the film
Sure.
to call all the shots, make sure that all the scenes get shot in a certain way. The director is also the person who does a massive amount of pre-planning, referred to as pre-production, with liaising between, not liaising between, but with both the producers, who are actually the people who do the liaising, and then the technical crew, like the director of photography and so forth, to plan often months ahead, what's desired, what do you want, what's going to be there on the day. The director, I guess some people must have chairs. I've never had one. Maybe somebody needs to get me a chair, but no, as far as I know, the most directors that I know tend to stand, and they might be right next to the actors. They might be right out of sight if they're not casting a shadow. They might be right behind the camera, behind the cinematographer, and they might be on their own monitor looking through another lens. The director is the person who is calling literally every shot, so not just every scene, but every angle of every scene and so forth.
It's crazy. Like let's say I watch a minute of a film, like how long does it take to like get that, like to shoot that? Sometimes I suppose you just shoot it in one shot and it's good, but other times it probably takes many takes or different things to get it together.
Yeah, it would really depend what's going on in that minute. It could differ from, it could actually be a minute of shooting, or it could be hours and hours and days and tons of editing and crane shots and dolly shots, and it really depends what's contained within that minute. If it's just two people talking, even that could be 2 takes of 57 that were done within a certain amount of time. It's just, there's too many variables to really be able to answer the question.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, how many months did it take for you guys to shoot this film?
It was 18 days of shooting, which is very, very, very fast.
That's fast.
Yeah.
Did you get any sleep in those 18 days, or are you just always up shooting?
No, they're mandated. When you're working with unions, especially, and we weren't working with necessarily all unions, but several of them, there are mandated break hours and so forth.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Wouldn't be to anybody's I guess if people are making a film in their basement for fun, they can make what rules they want, but typically there are mandates that you have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you think we can use empathy to be more inclusive?
I think it's as simple as imagining yourself in the place of somebody else, and whether that means imagining yourself having the neurodivergence somebody else has, or simply imagining why might they be feeling this way in response to this thing that's happened. Why might somebody be upset? Why might somebody not be upset? I think that is literally all we need to do, which is why I find it astounding that people are not, that there's not a greater amount of empathy in the world, because it doesn't seem that hard to say, oh, perhaps there is a reason why so and so is upset. Perhaps it might be this. It doesn't seem like a huge mental leap to take, but I think too often people are unwilling to imagine why somebody might be feeling a certain way, or why they might be reacting, why something negative might have taken place. It's simply assumed that it's because the other person is bad, or something very, very simplistic.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, I mean, I'm more empathetic when I have time in my schedule. I just, get my head up from my phone, look around, and pay attention. If I'm not paying attention, it's much harder to be empathetic. If you're just
Oh,
on the schedule, you
right.
don't
Well,
have those
sometimes you
breaks.
have to keep your head down,
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else you want to talk about we haven't discussed?
Not really. The main thing is that you can find Magnetosphere
Yep.
streaming all over North America, and especially on Prime Video and on Apple TV, and like 10 or 11 other platforms to boot. It's all over the place. And if you see it, and if you enjoy it, feel free to drop us a line, because it's an independent movie, and it's a new movie. It's newly released, and we're all listening.
Yeah. Awesome. You ready or where's the best place people can find you and connect with you?
Oh, with me specifically, better with the movie, which is on Instagram under at Magnetosphere Movie.
Okay, sure. Awesome. I'm ready for the last question.
Sure.
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
No,
No.
no. What does that
Have you ever
say?
had it?
Does it say about me? Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't say anything. I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum
Oh,
is located. So I've been asking all my guests just a funny question to pop on people to see what their answer is. So yeah, if you ever want to visit the spam museum, you got to come to Austin, Minnesota.
I did not know until this moment there was a spam museum, but I feel better for the knowledge, so thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered to be a champion for inclusion.